Hello and welcome back to Podpopper's Place and another Embossing Folder Friday. This is the month of July and it's all about the stars and stripes. A patriotic theme was not required, but when you think about the stars and stripes, that's automatically where my mind goes as a former military wife. So this month I used two embossing folders. One is stars and the other is stripes. These stripes actually remind me more of a Christmas or more of a masculine theme, but I wanted to try it again because this folder always gives me some consternation. It is very deeply embossed and it sometimes will rip the paper. So I decided to use some really heavy white cardstock and then spray it with some water so that hopefully it would emboss properly and not tear. It did work better than I hoped, which was great, but I had left some ink on there from a previous embossing time, and I got a little bit of red on there. So that was okay because I was going to color it red anyway. I just ended up needing to make my stripes larger than I had originally planned. So I used some Post-it note tape to just block out my white stripes and then made sure I got the red where my red had already gotten on my paper. The thing I wish I hadn't done was put my red on so quickly after embossing because there was still some water spots that hadn't dried yet, and as you can see the kind of splotchiness of it. It actually ends up working out okay in the end, but at that point I was kind of like, oh, I wish I had waited and had a little more patience there, but you'll see how I fix that in the rest of the video. The color I use here is Real Red from Stampin' Up. It does look a little orangey on camera, and I think maybe that was because the wetness of the paper made it dilute a little bit, but it ends up looking nice and red later. And then I'm using Blueberry Bushel. I believe it's a discontinued color from Stampin' Up, but it was a nice blue, solid blue color that I really liked, and I wanted all the stars to be blue. I'm going for a really abstract kind of flag look here. I don't want it to actually look like a flag. Once I had both of my pieces blended, I wanted to put some shimmer spray on there. So this is my homemade shimmer spray with Perfect Pearls. And so I spray those and set those aside to dry. And then I get out my United We Stand stamp. Now this thing is old. It's from 2001 when 9/11 happened. This was a stamp that was created after that happened. As if you're old enough to remember that, then you probably remember this sentiment being displayed a lot of different places. So, and I used some silver embossing powder to stamp that. The scary thing with, hard rubber stamps, the way we have them now is so much different because you can, put them in your stamping machines and restamp them several times. But so with the blocks, you just get kind of one chance. You can't go back over it again if you don't get enough on there. So I had wanted to use the banner dies, but I was using scrap paper to stamp the United We Stand, so it didn't quite fit. I didn't kind of move it over far enough to the side to make it work for the banner. This is where my laziness shows. I just trimmed down the United We Stand, and I'm going to use the small banner as a backdrop for it instead. I got out some Real Red Stampin' Up paper for my background, and I always try to cut out the center of the piece so that I'm not wasting paper, and I usually do that by just measuring a 1/2 inch out, so, and then just go around, and then I have another rectangle to use for something else. I end up playing with the layout quite a bit because I'm not really sure how I want everything to be put out, and I wasn't sure how many stars I wanted to use. So kind of when I got an idea about how I wanted to look, I just decided that there wasn't quite enough splatter on there. The shimmer wasn't that bright, and then I was still seeing the splotchiness from earlier where the water hadn't dried yet. So I kind of wanted to make that look more intentional. So I got out my splatter box and I put some splatter from both the Blueberry Bushel and the Real Red. And I love that 3 inkers for ink pads. I just think they're something really important that you should have when you buy an ink pad, and I use those to add some ink to those ink pads and a little bit of water so that I get a nice good color of splatter, and you can see that the red looked a little orangey on there, so I had to make sure and get some ink on there so that it wasn't coming out the wrong color. I decided to use 3 stars instead of 1 and put the banner on the other side and pop up the United We Stand on some foam tape. I kept most of this card fairly flat except for the sentiment, and I just thought there was enough bling, so I didn't add any extra embellishments since the stars were from glitter paper and I had a lot of splatter and shimmer for my spray. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you and your family had a blessed 4th of July if you're here in the United States. And I would love it if you would subscribe and come back again. Please be sure to see all the other participants in the hop. It is small, and so there's not very many to go through, so we hope you have time to sit back and relax and enjoy them. Thank you so much for being here.